Federal Reserve Chair Powell says DOJ has subpoenaed the central bank, threatens a criminal indictment. What is the story here? Number one, we've known from the past that Trump and the Trump admin has been pushing the Fed to try to lower rates. They want lower rates. They believe it's going to stimulate the economy. We've talked in the past on the podcast here that uh, the Trump admin wants to see the actual GDP rise faster than inflation. But definitely, a threat of criminal charges is definitely a ratchet up in terms of what's going on here. And then if you, on the left here, you see January 11th, the actual AP News report. On the right, you see the statement from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, where he actually responds, again, unusual, where he's actually explaining he believes that the threat against him is specifically because he refuses to force rates down. So, Matt, I did a poor job explaining a little bit here, but I would love to hear your thoughts on, how does this fit into the broader framework and, what kind of a story is this that we're seeing coming out of the Trump admin and the Fed?
Yep. So from I guess, a journalism standpoint, like I don't want to say it's the goal because I think a lot of journalism does not operate this way, but I think good journalism at its best would start with the facts or an observation of reality and look at things for what they are. So let's just stick to like what happened and then what's actually going on without trying or without actively being sucked in and picking a side here. So what happened, Cameron, you mentioned this has been a process since last summer about the cost overruns at the upgrades to the new Fed building. Personally, my favorite one, I don't want to make this show biased, but the new building plans, I saw this cited in one article talking about some two rooftop Italian beehives going into the plan. So you're always looking for like what's the one detail if you're a propagandist that sticks. I think rooftop Italian beehives. It just that stuck with me. I don't know. Maybe other people find that remarkable or humorous or all the above. All right, but anyway, that whole building, cost overrun scandal, 2.5 billion, et cetera. That's kind of the pretext or the backdrop here. And Cameron, as you mentioned, Friday the DOJ apparently showed up, ratcheted up its line of questioning, maybe crossed over that line into making an indictment. I don't know. Threatened indictment was one thing. That's a difference between actually delivering an indictment. And then Sunday night, we saw Jerome Powell post on the Federal Reserve X account. And I don't know if it broadcast to other social media networks as well, but it was a video of him basically just, essentially just hunkering down from the institutional perspective. Um, we're going to fight this, blah, blah, blah. All right, here's where I'd zoom out and try to be a good journalist. What do you see going on here? All right, over the long term, at least since the first Trump election victory in 2016, I think the writing's been in the wall where we've been seeing like a disruptive wave of challenge, like at every layer of society, from really from the grounds up. Some have called it a populist movement. There's also a counter-institutional play as well here. So I think it's unfair to call this just a popular uprising, a revolt of the public, whatever. And then you've got the institutional incumbents, I'd say, lined up on the other side. That's everything kind of like status quo, everybody who's just been established in basically the post-World War II rules-based order, right, with double quotes. Uh, I think, in my view of what we saw Sunday night, this represents essentially the Fed being pulled out off of the sidelines and now onto the front lines in that conflict. Like between, if you think about like an old school battle where, one side lines up on a battlefield, the other side lines up like Braveheart or those type of movies. This isn't how warfare is fought today. Um, but in that framing, I think what we're seeing is now the Fed has been pulled in as an institution to that side on the kind of incumbencies who are being challenged by the disruptive wave that just continues to gather strength despite ebbs and flows. If you look back since 2014, 2015, really the moment Trump announced his presidency. You've got other highlights, you've got some lowlights, but it's a rising wave. This really pulls the Fed in onto the battlefield. So if you make a chess analogy, it's been put in the game, and now the Fed itself, when I mean the Fed, largely the status of the Fed, not even the original institution in 1913 under the Federal Reserve Act, but really, what it became under FDR with the centralized Fed in Washington, D.C., um, you know, created to oversee the other 12 regional banks and operate monetary or conduct monetary policy through the FOMC, primarily through the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the most powerful regional Fed. That legacy structure is what's now put on the battlefield. So we don't know how this is going to play out. There's a ton of volatility here, but I think Sunday's development was a progressive step.
Definitely.
Fed's on the table here. Now you've also got on the other side, on the counter institutions, right? You've got the challenger to the Fed's version of the dollar, like a pure fiat credit money IOU, that really allows and enables this global dollar reserve infrastructure to survive or to grow and survive. Treasury itself has a challenger, right? It now, through the Genius Act, has the ability to create, I mean, constitutionally, you can't call them bills of credit, but basically like end around the financial system itself, like the Federal Reserve, has positioned itself as a monopoly on currency over the last 100 years. Treasury now has a viable alternative with stablecoins and what really Bitcoin has opened up. And we call them, competing blockchains, all of these stablecoin dollar IOUs. But through those rails, you now have an alternative. Really, that like the Civil War greenback was the best representation for public money that was really primarily controlled under the federal government, which ultimately reports to the people, or is supposed to, right? As opposed to a standard under the Federal Reserve dollar that is really under control of private banks. And when it comes down to it, the entity that really has control over, say, a political body or political control, in my perspective, it's primarily throughout history been the whatever institution or firm, business, et cetera, individual is able to fund the government itself. So far, that's been the Fed. Now the Treasury has a viable alternative. And now you're seeing with this Trump administration, pulling out the Fed onto the battlefield. Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell chose to do this themselves, or however you get there. You've now got that kind of clash between those two competing versions of the dollar. So this is an escalation. It ultimately had to happen to get us through. I think the most popular way people think about it, the term out there, is the fourth turning. But this was a key progression in my framework, what we'd be looking for to resolve this this political, social, everything, instability, polarization, all of that's flaring up. This is a key step towards resolving it. It doesn't resolve it. It just moves the plot forward. The climax, the resolution, they're all still in the future potentially, but this makes that outcome more probable in my perspective. So that's from a mind print hash story. From the Fed, it's a print story. From the Treasury's perspective with stablecoins, it's a hash story.